In
Okay,
monitoring the
well,
questions box, Vanessa, I see that we don't have any questions.
okay, perfect. Well, that's totally fine. If you do have any questions later, you can direct them to the IIE team and they'll shoot them over to me. As I said, it's not going to impact the program at all. Everything will continue as planned. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So the one thing that kind of the company was continuing to focus on through all of this is our push towards 5G. And so there's kind of this great anticipation that great things are going to come, and it's just around the corner. But we're just kind of not at that point yet where 5G is ready. But I anticipate some great things coming in the next year or two with 5G and with just things kind of quieting down, I hope. You know, we're waiting on some things to kind of finalize and come to a close. But I anticipate things getting better. So we made it through kind of a big storm, and we definitely lost some employees along the way, but we're still standing as a company, which is a good thing at the end of the day. So thank you for sticking with us and for just all of your hard work and efforts in the Global Scholars Program. And we're very proud of the Global Scholars Program and glad that we were able to run it this year and to have all of you awesome people involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, for your transparency in the whole process, and wanted to reiterate our thanks for all of your support, and thanks for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
Can I just add something really? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to add, just as Vanessa was saying, those scholars who did have a change in their mentor have already been contacted and matched with their new mentor. So if you haven't heard anything from us, that process has already been completed. So you just continue on with your mentor as you've been doing.
Great, thanks for that. Anything else, Vanessa, before we move on?
That is it for me. So enjoy the webinar.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, and before I welcome our host speaker, which I'm so excited about, and I know she is too, Allie and I wanted to reiterate some of the resources that you have. So for those of you that joined us for our check-in meeting last month, some of this will be a bit repeated, but we just wanted to remind everyone of where they should be right now. As you all know, Allie is your wonderful advisor based in Chicago. She works with you all directly on any questions that you have at all about the mentorship, about your scholarship, about money, about life, about anything. She's always happy to hear from you. And I work very closely with your mentors. So they might hear from you every once in a while to check in. We love it when you tell us if you've had great interactions with your mentors, or especially if you feel like you haven't heard from them in a while, we're happy to give an extra push. So please continue to be in touch. We've heard great things so far and want you to continue to feel free to be in touch with us for anything. So I wanted to just remind you of where you are now. We're already a couple months into your program. We're very excited for you. You're now at milestone 4. So I just brought up your curriculum. What you've already done is had your initial goal setting with your mentor. You've taken your Strengths Finder test. You worked on some some career planning. And right now you're doing some resume building and interview worksheets. So as you go through your curriculum, you'll see that you have some attached worksheets to go through with your mentor. You have your resume writing worksheet, your interview skills worksheet, your cover letter worksheet. And today, I feel like it comes at the perfect time. We have Wendy, who I'll introduce very soon, talking to you a lot more about interview skills from her own personal experience. And then what's coming up? Right after this, you'll reach milestone 5, and it's so close to the end. So this is where I really want you to push hard to get as much out of your mentor as possible. You've really gotten to know each other. You should feel comfortable to ask the hard questions, and you'll cover networking and enhancing technical skills. One thing that I did not put on this slide about the curriculum is in about 2 months' time, we're going to have another enrichment webinar, and that is going to be focusing on self-branding and networking. So you'll be able to then turn back on those skills, refocus on it. It's so important in the work that you'll be doing in the coming months to expand your network. And you'll have the opportunity to talk to Lauren Andrews, a very wonderful woman that works at Google here in San Francisco, who wants to share out her expertise on that. So more to come closer to July for our next enrichment webinar. I love to plug the next one. You want to talk a little bit about expectations?
Yes. So I just wanted to review the expectations of your mentorship. We expect you to be communicating regularly with your mentor. I hope that you are respecting the meeting time and the schedules of your mentors because everyone's busy, and I hope that you're all being cognizant of your mentor's time and appreciative that they have volunteered to work with you and just what that means. I hope that you've all worked to identify and refine some goals for your career as well as goals for this program, and that you're working with your mentor to achieve those goals. Hopefully you're completing all your program surveys. You just should have completed this mid-program survey. So you've done the pre-program, mid-program, you have one more at the end of the program that you'll have to do. So thank you all for completing those. Bring any issues that you have to my attention or Linda's attention as soon as you can. I know that we've both been checking in with you and your mentors, but if there's something that we don't catch, I hope that you feel comfortable enough to reach out to us right away for any reason. And then you must complete the full program and complete all your tasks, which leads me to my next slide, which is very important. If you can change the slide, Linda. There we go. So as I said, you have to complete the full program and all of your tasks in order to receive your the second half of your scholarship payment this summer. I've been checking in with several of you who are a little bit behind on completing your tasks or checking them off. But just so you're aware, you should be working on milestone 4, as Linda mentioned. So as you can see in this image, all of the tasks for milestone 4 are checked off. And if you're having any difficulty with this, or if you don't know how to check off your tasks or anything like that, please let me know as soon as possible, because this is all I have to know that you have completed the program and that I'm able to send you your second scholarship payment. So it's very important. And speaking of your scholarship payment, you can go to the next slide, Linda. You'll have to complete all your tasks, and you'll also have to submit proof of how you're going to use and how you've been using your scholarship funds. So just as a reminder, you have to use your scholarship for academic expenses, and you will need to submit documentation of how you used your scholarship by the end of the mentorship. So that would be the end of July 2018. And please make sure that you're sending your documentation to this email address, the WeTech Qualcomm at IIE email address. And you must submit your receipt or your documentation in order for me to send your second scholarship payment as well. And I'll be sending reminders, but I just want to remind you now. And then I had one more slide. One of your fellow scholars, Archana from India, emailed me this tip that her mentor sent her, or told her, and I thought I could share it with you because she said it was really helpful to her. And that's just to contact contact some seniors from your school or your college who have already graduated, and ask them about the work they're doing now, and if there's anything that they wish that they had done in college that would have helped them more. And as Arcana says, this was really useful for her, and she's thankful she made this effort. So I thought that I would share this with you because I'm sure many of you would really benefit from connecting with people who have graduated before you. So with that, I'll hand it back to Linda, who's going to introduce our speaker for the day.
Thanks, Allie. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Wendy Okolo. Wendy, I met you, earlier this fall, and she made an impression instantly as someone who's super approachable, super balanced, someone that I think anyone would love to have on their team, and obviously very intelligent. She is an aerospace research engineer at NASA Ames Research Center here in the Bay. Wendy, I know that you'll do a lot better job of introducing yourself, but you have such amazing experience, even mentoring as early as high school, and I'm really enjoying getting to know you better as we were prepping for this, and feel like you're the perfect match to speak to this group. And I really love how you're advocating for women at NASA, and just really appreciate you being here. And with that, I am going to turn it over to you. And let me know when you want me to switch slides.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda and Allie, for the warm introduction. You're making my head big. And I'm so happy to be here. And I just wanted to say real quick to all of the young women on the call, I want this to be an interactive discussion. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. There are no stupid questions. And I'd rather, get some feedback, and I'm very approachable, so you can ask me whatever it is you want to ask, even unrelated to the topic of discussion, which is interview skills. So today I'll be talking to you about, what I think is important for you to know for an interview before, during, and after the interview. Well, before I go ahead and get started, I just want to give you a brief overview of the outline for the talk today. So next slide, Linda. And is my webcam on, by the way? Can you? We don't, but I'm just curious. Okay, it is. So at some point, I'll probably.
For as long as you want. I love looking at your beautiful face, but I know that from personal experience how hard it can be.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I might get distracted and just keep talking. I don't even know. We'll see. So yeah, I'll give you an overview about me. I want you to know my story and where I'm coming from. And I see that you've been learning a lot about this concept called mentorship, and what does mentorship really mean to me, and what does it mean to, to people like you. I'm originally from Nigeria, and it's a concept that I wasn't aware of that was playing a role in my life at different stages, that I didn't know that it was actually mentorship that I was experiencing or dealing with or giving back. And then we'll go into the interview. I'll talk about what the interview process is like before, during, and after the interview, and then summarize with like a few key points, and then open it up for Q&A, which we can do along the way as well. So if you have questions while I speak, please don't hesitate to ask me. So next slide. So about me, next slide. I've put up a few pictures on the next slide, some baby pictures and some pictures of me growing up in Nigeria. The top left, there's a picture of me and my two sisters who were sort of my official first mentors that I didn't realize were mentors. And the sister on the right, that she created this caption that says, "Phyllis, don't let me go." She was the one that did all this, by the way. And she's 8 years older than me, and she would, go to school, come back and teach me what she learned at school, right? I was, I don't know how old, 5, 6, learning about biology and how the body works and what osmosis and diffusion are. And she was one of my first mentors, and she was very supportive and had my back. My mom in the center picture was also, the person that I'd go to with questions or self-doubt when I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to be what I was. When you're, I think this narrative is changing, but when you're African, when you're Nigerian, you grew up and your parents tell you exactly what you're going to be before you even know what that means. So I was 3 years old and 4 years old telling everyone I was going to be I was going to be an engineer, and I didn't even know what that was. And one day in school, it was career day. I was about 6, and we had to tell the whole class what we were going to be when we grew up. And it got to my turn. And I said, "Oh, I want to be an engineer." And my teacher thought it was funny that I wanted to be an engineer. And she laughed at me, and the whole class laughed at me. She was like, "You want to be an engineer? You want to fix ceiling fans?" This is way back in, what, 93, 94? You know, or what, maybe 95. I don't remember. She's like, "You're going to be fixing ceiling fans as an engineer. You're a girl." And so I came home to this woman in the center, and I told her, I was like, "I don't want to be an engineer anymore, you know." She's like, "Why?" I was like, "Well, my teacher said I'm going to be fixing fans. I don't want to fix fans. That's boring and dirty work." She's like, "What?" She doesn't know what she's talking about. So as a mentor, right, that she didn't realize that she was able to tell me about the cool things that engineers did, right? Things like building planes and spacecraft that take people to the moon and beyond. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool," right? So my family, very supportive, my first set of mentors. And then I have a younger brother in that bottom right corner here who was my first mentee that I didn't realize, right? He was my first mentee, and I was teaching him things and guiding him. And he's, you know, significantly younger than me, but he was my first mentee. So this mentorship that you're learning and you're going through is not always a clear-cut formal program, right? So seek and be a mentor in different ways. You know, it's not always this, you know, within a rigid formal program. And I just want you to kind of keep that in mind. So next slide is a picture of me when I was in college, about your about the space that you're in right now. Aerospace engineering bachelor's degree. I think I was a sophomore, so a second year at this time. And in this picture, my bed is fused with my study table. And someone said it was because I liked to study. And it wasn't because I liked to study. I just did it because it was the cutest thing for the room. But I've been where you are, you know, just doing homework, trying to figure out where exactly I fit in this, you know, in this big picture, in this grand scheme of things. You know, I kind of like what I'm doing. I think there's a physics textbook there. I liked physics, I liked math, and I just, you know, did my homework. I was a sophomore then. I didn't know that. A second year undergraduate student, I didn't know that I was going to do my PhD. I didn't know that I was going to be at NASA. I didn't know any of these things. But I worked through school, undergraduate, found myself doing a PhD, did a couple of internships, did some interviews, you know, got to where I am. And on the next slide, I'm now at NASA. And this is a picture of one of the projects that I'm on that I got on last year. A group of young early career professionals like myself at NASA Ames Research Center put together a proposal to our Space Technology Mission Directorate at headquarters in DC, and we won $2.5 million to learn how to make this vehicle fly. So it's 5 of us, 5 early career people with some mentors. We have a group of seasoned NASA mentors who can kind of guide us and teach us from their mistakes how to best position ourselves for success with this vehicle. Mentorship, again, these things just keeps coming up, and it just keeps coming up, and you're just going to be so sick and tired of hearing mentoring and mentorship, right? So mentorship is very important. So next few slides, next slide, I just want to say a few things about mentorship and what it means to me. Have a mentor, be one. You have more to share than you think, that you can imagine. There are no rules to mentorship. You can have different mentors for different things, and maybe formal or informal. But there's one thing that I've seen that is very important about the mentor-mentee relationship. You want to be genuine, right? You don't want to, you know, seem like you're just taking and taking and taking from someone. You want to be genuine and considerate of people's time, because that mentor-mentee relationship sometimes can even be more important than what you think you're gaining from that person. And this is a picture of myself and my PhD advisor, who was my mentor in graduate school and just very instrumental to my success and the success of my PhD and me being where I am. So your mentors don't always look like you, right? Sometimes you can find mentors in very different corners, in very different places, and you want to glean what you can from the different people that you're around. So keep that in the back of your mind. You don't always have to gravitate to the people that that look like you and speak like you and sound like you. You can have mentors in very different forms. Now to interviewing. Enough about mentoring. So the interview process is, I'm going to break it down into 3 parts, what I think is important. Why would you care about this? Why do you want to do an interview? Why do you want to get an internship, a job? You know, you just getting that process and getting more confident in, you know, in going through these things that seem very, very almost intractable, like an interview. You're getting interviewed by a company, professional company, to do what you don't think you know how to do. So I'm going to break it down to you and show you that it's actually very straightforward and it's very simple, and it's not something to freak out about. It's not something to worry about. So 3 steps. Next slide. Before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. Before the interview, you have to do your homework on yourself and on the company, right? So the homework that you have to do for you, who would have thought, right? They have to do homework for yourself before the interview. You want to take inventory of yourself, right? So you've seen this position online that you want to apply for, or you've seen someone has told you about a possible opening in their company, or you know that there's something that you're interested in. You want to know where you stand in comparison to the skills that are required for that job. Even if it's not in comparison to the skills, you want to know all the things that you've achieved, the things that you've accomplished. You are part of this Qualcomm mentorship experience. Note that on your resume, update your resume, keep track of all of the things that you've achieved. If you turned in, Ali was just talking about turning in your report card on time. If you turned in your report card on time, every step that she asked you to, that's something you can put consistently early with delivering reports on time, right? If you didn't turn them in on time, don't put consistently late. Okay, that's not something that's going to help you. But you want to keep track of all of those skills that you have. You want to know yourself. Did you ever tutor a fellow student, a classmate, a younger brother, a younger cousin? Did you ever volunteer at your church or somewhere else? Did you ever do any volunteers, soccer, teammate basketball, playing any kind of sports that you feel like you had to work as part of a team? Were you part of a choir, like a church, for example? So how can it be important if you're a part of a choir? Why do you think a company would care about that, right? So if you're part of a choir, like if you're in the choir at church, and say you sing, you're a soprano, and like you sing a certain note, and the person that sings the alto is out that day, and you don't find out, you get there, and then they tell you the last minute, oh, you're gonna have to do this, and you have to do it. It means that you can think on the fly. It means that you're easily adaptable to many changing situations. Employers look for things like that. So think outside the box. It's not just the previous work that you've done, but all of the experiences that you have, your education, your skills and competencies, all of the experience that you have, paid and unpaid, extracurricular activities, the skills that you picked up during all of those, how can they translate to on-the-job experience? So make an inventory of all of these things and write them down. Also know what is important to you, right? Is it important to you that you work somewhere that you get paid a lot of money? That's important to a lot of people, right? For me, it's important that I do good work that makes me happy. It's really not about the money for me. I have to be fulfilled in whatever I do. So, and that's okay. We work differently, but you want to know what your work ethics are, what's important to you. Update your resume and have at least 3 copies. I, in the past, have gone overboard, and I've done like 8 copies of my resume when I walk into an interview room.
I've totally done the same thing.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I had like 8, but have multiple copies of your resume with you printed before you go into that interview, and just, make sure it's updated, right? Make sure it's updated with contact information that's recent, addresses that are recent. Don't have contact information from 10 years ago. If they want to reach you, they can't, but update that resume and have it, hard copies printed with you. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn off my webcam. Okay, so before the interview, what do you also have to do? So now you've done all this inventory. You know what makes you tick. You know what you're good at. You know your experiences in the past. That can be schoolwork, job experiences, volunteer, extracurricular, sports teams, that you've been a part of. But you also have to do your homework on them. Prepare, prepare, prepare. It's not just about you. Research the position, right? Know what the position is asking for and see how you can start to tailor those experiences that you've had to that position. Research the company. what's important to the company, right? What do they care about? Understanding a strategic direction. You can find this out from just looking at the company. You can Google the company. You can see what their mission statement is. A lot of companies have mission statements. A lot of organizations have mission statements. See how you can tie that into the things that you've done in the past, or the things that you're excited about, or the things that you know that you're capable of. Look up their recent projects, recent successes. Look up the team. If you know the team that you're going to be interviewing with, look up the team, see what they're about. I've had, if I was interviewing for something, I would go on my, even after I know I've been on my LinkedIn and seen, oh, someone just recently viewed my profile, and I know that that person was someone I had interviewed with or was going to interview with. So they're doing their homework on you. You do your homework on them. You know, talk to other interns and employees. These ties into the previous WeTech GlobalCom scholar who said one of the mentorship tips that she feels is so important was connecting with previous students that had been where she was and learning from them what she would do, what they would do differently if they were in her shoes. So talk to other interns and employees if you can, and just see what they think or what they feel you should know. My current position at NASA, I had to interview for it. And before the interview, I spoke to someone who I knew worked at NASA Ames, and she's actually the primary investigator on that project that I showed you the picture of. And now we're very good friends and have a good working relationship. But I talked to her, I spent about 45 minutes talking to her. What do I need to know? What are these people like? Do you know this interviewing manager, the hiring manager? What can I ask for in terms of salary and compensation? Where should I place myself? You know, what kind of things, you want to talk to people, and people usually most times are willing to tell you. They're willing to share their experiences. They want you to learn. People typically don't want you to make the same mistakes they made, right? They want to tell you everything that'll help you succeed. Finally, prepare 2 to 3 thoughtful questions before the interview, right? So from the research you're doing, from understanding what's important to you, your own ethics, your own values, you want to have questions, because I promise you at the end of your interview, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? And if you say no, you're going to look very unserious. You're going to look like you just came here and you don't even know what you're talking about, and you're just doing this. So you want to have at least 2 to 3 thoughtful questions that you might ask during the interview along the way, depending on how the interview is going, or you might have an option to ask them all at the very end. Next slide. So I put an example of some of these thoughtful questions that you can think about to include or to ask at the end of your interview. Here are some of them. What are the biggest challenges of this job, right? When can I expect to hear from you? Who will I report to if I'm offered the position? Can I meet or at least talk to him or her before I begin? You might be so focused on getting the job, but you forget that the company is interviewing you, but you are also interviewing that company, right? You want to know if it's a good fit for you. You want to know if that company will position you in the best way to succeed, if that company will bring out the best in you, if that hiring manager will bring out the best in you, if that team is a team that you see yourself with, at least maybe for a year, right? You want to know all these things. So they're interviewing you and you are interviewing them. So questions like, what opportunities do you provide your interns and young employees for growth and learning about the company, right? Some companies will do a rotational program where when you start with the company, the first year or the first few years, you spend maybe 3 to 6 months at different sites or different locations of the company. Those are companies that are focused on your own growth. So you see, you get a bird's eye view of what the company is, and then you can decide where you want to be, what team you liked well, what project you like better, and then you can settle there. So if there's a company that has that and is offering you pay that's maybe $2,000 less than a company that doesn't, these are things that you weigh, right? So you want to be aware of these kinds of professional development and opportunities within the company. Would you like a list of references? How would you describe this company's value? Sometimes you can even ask, what's your favorite thing about working at this place? What's your least favorite thing about working here? You know, sometimes when you feel like you're gonna have a genuine relationship with your interviewer, they'll tell you, my favorite thing is, I can tell the favorite thing I like about working at NASA is that I have the opportunity to conduct interesting independent research, publish these results, get interns, travel, speak at conferences, just that information exchange is not something that it can get in a lot of places, right? And that's my favorite thing. So that's something I'd be comfortable. I tell my interns, when they ask me these kind of questions, but I share these with them. I'm always trying to convince people to go to grad school and to go get PhDs anyway. So, but I share these things with them. So next slide. That was before the interview. You've done all this homework on yourself. You've done all this homework on this company. And now you're there during the interview. And I put this picture here because this is what you don't want to be doing during the interview, right? You don't want to be pulling out your phone, texting, smiling, nonchalant. I don't know if you can see the interviewer's face. She looks very upset. She looks pissed. I thought this was a funny cartoon, and so I put that up there. But during the interview, you want to dress appropriately and arrive early. And this, to me, I think is the most important thing during the interview. You want to be quietly confident, right? You want to remember, you want to know who you are. Nobody knows you better than you. Nobody knows your skills and capabilities better than you. Nobody knows what you've been through. Nobody knows your experiences better than you, right? So you want to be confident in person, over the phone. When you dress appropriately and when you arrive early, it's easier to be confident than when you're not dressed appropriately and having to fidget and adjust, your skirt, or you're a little late, and you're frazzled and rushing through stuff. You're not as settled, you're not as confident. So that's why I put that dress appropriately and arrive early, even for phone interviews, right? So even for phone interviews, if you're doing a phone or video interview, be seated at that interview 10 to 15 minutes before it starts. Be seated where? Like on your table, your chair. Tell everyone in your family, tell everyone in your house that you're having an interview so that they know. I've done interviews where I went into the study when I was at my sister's house. She has 2 kids, and they love to tell me stories, right? They would come in and say, Auntie Wendy, did you see? Like, this is not the time. So I'd have to tell everyone so that they could hold the children and it wouldn't be noisy and I'd have that privacy. But you also want to be confident. When you're settled and you're confident, sit up straight and just remember who you are.
Wendy, I love all of these points. They're so great because they go across all borders. I mean, we have participants today from Taiwan, South Korea, India, and all of these points are so valid across all business cultures.
Right. I would agree. I would totally agree. And is there anyone on the line that has a question or a comment on any of these points, or how they've worked for them or didn't work for them in the past?
I'd also be curious, by raise of hand, who's been part of an interview already. Has anyone raised your hand if you've interviewed before? So it looks like almost the whole group has been in an interview before. So that's great practice.
That's great. That's great practice. So some of these things you might kind of remember when they worked out well for you or it didn't, and it happens with all of us, right? It happens with the best of us, where you're like, darn it, I should have said this, or I should have sat up straight, or I should have shaken that hand a little more firmly, or I should have said hi to that administrative assistant. Imagine walking into an interview where you're so focused on the hiring manager or the person that's going to interview you, and you walk right past their secretary. You just, you're so confused. And sometimes they ask these people what their opinions are of you, right? So it doesn't always, it's not always easy to remember all of these things. That's why it's so important that I just say, be quietly confident. If you're quiet and confident.
Wendy, can I ask a favor of you? Can you tell everyone a little bit more about how women often experience imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. So, show of hands, how many people know what imposter syndrome is? Can you see the poll?
I do.
I know Allie and I do, but no one has raised their hand, so it might be a new concept for many of them.
So Allie, let's have you explain what imposter syndrome is.
It's when you feel that you're not good enough, that you've been invited to a place, but you feel that you're not good enough to be there, or you feel like that you shouldn't be there. And it's driven more by self-doubt and not that you're not qualified to be there, because you usually are.
Exactly. You feel like you're not qualified to be there. You wonder sometimes how you got there, and you feel in the back of your mind that at some point, everyone's going to realize that you're a fraud. And then you'll be found out and you're like, yeah, how did I get there? And a lot of very, very accomplished people, particularly women, particularly minorities, experience imposter syndrome. I was at MIT 2 years ago. Was it MIT? I think it was MIT, right? Yes, I was at MIT 2 years ago for a Women in Aerospace Symposium that had, I think I was still a student at the time, or was it 3 years ago, that had a diverse group of women doing PhDs in aerospace related fields. So this was at MIT Stanford organized symposium. And one of our speakers was a professor in the computer science department, very, very accomplished woman, and was in Nature Science magazine as, featured as like one of the top 100 scientists in, the country. And when she came up there to speak, and when she started speaking to us, she said, when she got invited to speak, she was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, right? What do I have to tell them? What do I possibly have to share? I don't have anything to share. I don't want to do this. And she almost backed out of the speaking engagement because she felt like she's not that great. She's not that smart, and she really doesn't have anything to share. This is a computer science professor at Harvard. So if she has imposter syndrome, you can best believe that I have it. And you feel it every day. And so when you walk into an interview and you're getting asked certain questions, or you're being put with a group of people that are interviewing you and you feel like you're expecting to know everything, that hits us as women even more strongly than it hits other people. We don't feel like we're good enough, right? But there are certain tips, there are certain ways to deal with imposter syndrome, or at least to not let it show that that's what you're internally struggling with, right? And one of them, again, is being just quietly confident and knowing who you are, knowing all the work that you did to get here, and how fortunate and how diligent, how much of a hard worker you are, and knowing that if you don't know something, at least you're that person that will grind and burn the midnight oil till you figure it out. Due diligence is actually how I get over imposter syndrome. If I feel like there's something I don't know, I will beat it till I know it, So there are different ways to get over it. But thank you, Linda, for bringing that up, because it's a problem. It's a valid thing that a lot of women go through, regardless of status or achievements or how many accolades we feel like we've had. So remember to listen. If your hiring manager tells you their name, remember to listen for the name and how it's pronounced, because you don't want to call someone the wrong thing and they get offended. Remember your coursework and projects. Experience isn't always job related, so you might not always have to go to your previous jobs, especially when you're starting out your new careers, right? You don't have a lot of job experience. So remember your coursework, your projects, and everything that you've done, extracurricular activities particularly. Don't ramble. This one I struggle with because I probably am a rambler. And if I've been rambling during this webinar, I apologize, but try not to ramble, right? Be concise and deliver, the question, like deliver the answers to the question that you've been asked. And then try to put a positive spin on your weaknesses. If you get the question of, tell me one of your weaknesses, don't just say, I like to sleep in and I'm always late, right? What I would say, which is actually one of mine, and this is what I say, is I get excited about very different things, right? The problem with that is, completely finishing something with my undivided attention before I get excited about another research project. And the way I handle that is I limit the number of projects that I work on, and I learn to say no. So you want to put a positive spin on something that's negative. If they ask you about what didn't you like about your previous manager, don't say, oh, he was the worst. You might want to say, oh, he struggled with delegating, and as a result, this happened. So you just want to be positive with your responses to your questions. And when you answer questions, you want to use the STAR approach. Next slide. So the STAR approach for a question that you get is S, to explain the situation, T, to identify your own tasks or role in the situation, A, to describe your actions in the situation, and why you took those actions. And R, what are the results of your behavior and the outcome of the situation? You typically get these for behavioral questions when they ask you to describe a time this happened, describe a time when you were stressed at work, give an example of a time you had to deal with an upset teammate, client, coworker, give an example of a problem you faced at your last internship or job. You want to talk about the situation, you want to say what your role was in that situation and what actions you took, and then the results of that behavior. Well, here's something that's interesting about the STAR approach, that in putting these slides together and trying to figure out what should I convey to these young women. Sometimes it's not always a positive, right? Sometimes things don't always work out. But if you give an example of a story or an instance or a situation where something didn't quite work out the way you would have hoped, you want to go back and say, this is what you would have done differently. Because then what that means for the hiring manager is you have the ability to learn from your mistakes. You have the ability to think back, self-reflect and be introspective about the things that have gone on in your life. You know how to learn lessons, and that's very, very important. So sometimes it's okay to go back and say, this is what I would have done differently if I was in that situation again, based on all the experiences that I've had and based on what I now know. Any questions about that?
To get the ball rolling on just some questions, because I know there are many and they just might be shy, and that's fine too. Wendy, do you have any strategies for practicing this? Do you have friends that you go to, or how do you go about, it took a lot of practice for me to get to the point where I was actively seeking an approach to answering questions.
So I think for me, primarily, it came from taking inventory. So that first slide that I showed up before the interview, what you need to do, that taking inventory really, really helps me gather my thoughts on issues. Even taking inventory of the things I've done. Linda, I've been at NASA for a couple of years now. Today I went to check my mail, and this is becoming more of a conversation. I went to check my mail and I had 3 certificates. One of them was from Tech Women, from the U.S. Department of State and Education and Cultural Affairs. The other one was for the Combined Key Workers campaign that I was the campaign leader for charity organizations in the Bay. And the third was for my role as, a SEPM, working to change the narrative and increase recruitment and retention of women at NASA. And you forget that you've done all those things. So when you start to take inventory of the things you've done and the situations that you've been in, the STAR approach falls right out, So it's so important that you sit down and take inventory of the things you've done. It doesn't all have to go in your resume, but just taking inventory of all of the things that you've been involved in, the things you've done. Oh my goodness, you can write a book. So please, if you take one thing away from this today, I didn't bold it, but just take inventory of all of your achievements, all of your involvement, and I promise you that the STAR approach will just fall right out of it. You know what the situation was. If you were involved in a project, a course project for one of your classes that you had to do and submit a project, and you remember, oh, I did so and so project. That was a team of 5 people. Oh, I remember we had a teammate that just wouldn't want to contribute to the deliverable. How did that work out? Did I talk to them, or did my friend talk to them? Did I bring it up? So maybe I didn't talk to them, but maybe I brought it up, or maybe I offered help, or maybe I asked a question that indicated, oh, this person really was going through some things in their family and they weren't able to contribute as much. Or maybe they were just slackers and I removed them from my team. I don't know. But when you start to take inventory, I think, in my opinion, I think that's where these things fall out.
That's great. We did get our first question, and Ankita, thank you so much. I think this is a really great sample question that I think interns typically get, or sometimes you're being referenced to school and projects. So her question to you, Wendy, is can you give us an example of when you had to deal with an upset teammate? And And I want you to frame this in two ways, Wendy and Ankita. Hopefully this is okay. Just like a own personal story as a leader, how you deal with that and how you would answer that in an interview.
So I'm gonna answer it how I would answer it in an interview, right? Or just tell the story. I can tell you one. When I was an undergraduate, I was the president. Before I became the president, I was a professional public relations officer for the Society of Women Engineers, the university chapter. And, then I became the president. When I became the president, I had a few, at least two officers that were officers before I became president as well. So I had worked with them the previous year. And one of my officers, the treasurer, so the issue that I realized, or what was happening with the organization, was two presidents before me. She did everything. She was the president, but she took on the role of treasurer, vice president, PR. She was doing everything. The problem with that kind of thing, the problem with not delegating, is when she leaves, the organization falls apart, right? So everything works when she's there, but when that person graduates, everything falls apart. So you have to delegate. You have to people have to do what they're supposed to do, right? The organization cannot be built on one person. So when she left, I just kind of saw holes and so much confusion and us having to learn. So I said, when I get in there, people are going to do what they're supposed to. And we're going to have transition meetings before me and after me. So when I'm leaving, we're going to be transitioning. Each person is going to be transitioning to the officer after them. So I had a treasurer that was supposed to do treasurer things, take documents to the bursar's office and get receipts and, and all of that. And I had, put a note one time and asked her to do what she was supposed to do. And she did it once, didn't get it completed, and brought it back. And I told her to do it again. And she just dropped it on the desk. And, like it was something problematic in the email. Bear in mind, this was years ago, so I'm trying to get to it. So she, it seemed very offhanded, like I'm not doing that, or I can't get to it, or whatever. But I'm like, okay, if you can't do it, let me know. But this is your role, right? And then she went off on me. She said, "You're the worst president. The previous president was not like this. You're the worst. You're such a problematic president," and blah, blah, blah. And I was so hurt and so angry, and I didn't know what to do. But then I remembered it does take a village. We had an advisor. We had an advisor for the Society of Women Engineers, right, who was a professor in the computer science department. So you have to realize everything isn't always on you, right? Everything isn't on you. You have mentors. You have mentees. There are people you can ask. So I went to my advisor. And I told her, I that was my own initiative. That's what I did. I was like, this is what's going on with the organization. This is what's going on with me and this person. And my advisor talked to me and said, people work differently, right? There are people that you can tell, can you do A, B, and C? If not, that's fine. If you can only do A, that's fine, and they'll move on with it. I'm that kind of person. I don't need to be sweet talked into doing something. Just let me, because I don't have time. Let's just do it. But there's some people that you have to approach. Hi, the organization really needs A, B, and C done. I feel like you're the best position to do this for us. Do you think that this is something you can do? Do you think you'll be able to do this? And this is, your role, and this will be good for you. So when I heard that, when I got it wrapped in my head, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why you need to approach people differently. We're all different, right? So she wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a bad person. From then on, the relationship we had, she actually did apologize, and I went to her and I apologized. I was like, this wasn't what it was. I wasn't trying to be rude at all. I just thought if you couldn't do it, just let me know and we can move on. But I didn't expect that kind of relationship. But so it does happen.
Answer.
Yeah, it does happen where, things happen and you have to pull from the village that you have.
Exactly.
The world is not all yours to solve, right?
Yeah. Wendy, not to just kind of steer us back on course, time is in San Francisco, at least I know, very different for others. It's nearing 7:30. I know that our aim was to keep everyone online for an hour, but since the introduction and just general check-in was a little bit longer than we expected. Do you think 15 minutes is about enough time to go through the rest of your slides? And I want to give ample opportunity for people to ask questions. And Keitha wrote a comment, said, thanks, it's a great example to you. So obviously they have great questions, you have great answers. I just want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence and facilitating this well too.
Yeah, I think I only have about 4 slides left, and then if they have questions, so questions and the slides can fill up the next 15 minutes, but I'll be done in way less than 15 minutes.
Okay, good. All right, great. I'll let you keep on going.
So let's go to the next slide, actually.
Okay.
So the next slide, I just wanted to put this in here for the question that you can't seem to answer during an interview, because you'll get that, right? You get a question that you don't know what to say and you feel like you might have to ramble. And here are a few tips that I think will help you to work through the answer. For sure, you want to take your time, right, with answering the question. You don't just want to jump into answering a question that you don't understand, you know you don't have an answer to. You end up making yourself look worse than if you took your time, paraphrased, and think out loud, right? Sometimes it's about working through the problem out loud, and then they see that this is how you solve a problem, this is how you approach a problem. You also want to redirect the question if you feel like, okay, none of that is working out, right? If you're thinking out loud through the problem and you're still not, nothing is working, you want to redirect it. For example, they ask you about a certain technique that you've never heard of, you're not aware of, and you can say, one of the reasons I'm excited about this position is that it gives me an opportunity to extend my vast experience in ABC, to XYZ, because they're talking about XYZ that you don't know, right? And so you have experience in this other field, and now you're looking forward to it. Have a fail-safe, right? Talk about how easy or how you're a fast learner, how quickly you learn, new methods, new techniques, how quickly you learn on the fly, and give an example of that, right? It's a concept I'm not very familiar with, but I've been actively trying to learn about so-and-so, as evidenced by my knowledge of the current trajectory of your company, the companies you work with, the projects you deliver, your recent first quarter earnings, and this and that, and how satisfied, so don't just say, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Don't say I don't know. Speak to your capabilities. Remember what I said about putting a positive spin on a weakness. Next slide. After the interview, the most important thing is to be gracious. Say thank you, right? Thank the hiring manager, any administrative assistants, any team members you met. Use handwritten thank you notes if possible. I understand that sometimes that's not always possible. And so my solution to that is a professional letter style, and attach that letter to an email and send that. So the next slide, I give an example of what that professional, letter looks like. So you can just create a sample letterhead for yourself with your name, your address, cell phone number, and all of that. And put the name of the person at the company that you're addressing that letter to. Make one individual thank you letter for each person. Don't use the same thank you letter for everyone, right? So, and in the thank you letter, you want to speak to, thank you for giving me your time. I liked how you talked about so-and-so. Repeat what you felt was important for them to know, right? If there's something that you said during the interview that's one of your big strengths and you want to reiterate it, you can say that. If there's something you feel like you forgot to say during the interview that you want them to know, you can say that as well. Reiterate why you're a good fit for the position, and how you look forward to hearing from them, even if you feel that the interview did not go well. And include contact information, particularly like a cell phone number, right? If the hiring manager has something they want to talk to you about really quickly, before they make a decision, they can call you, right away. So just, include a thank you letter that has all of this information. And next slide. So the key takeaways from this for before, during, and after the interview is prepare, prepare, prepare. Do all of your research about the company and about yourself. Be confident, right? Remember your extracurricular activities and use the STAR approach when you're answering questions. And send a thank you note. Next slide is just a quote that I I put up when I'm talking to minorities, people of color, underrepresented groups that are in STEM. And it's just, you can read this. I'm not going to read this out loud to you, but it's just a reminder that you have something unique, right? No one thinks like you. No one is you. And that's your strength. You have something unique to contribute, right? To a team, to a group of people, the way you approach problems, the way you solve them, the way your mind works is unique, and we need that. So there's not a group of people that a certain career is reserved for, right? The men we know that are confident and bursting through doors and doing all of the stuff that we think, oh, they must be so smart. This isn't reserved for them. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are not reserved for them. So we need all of this energy. We need all of this creativity. So just remember that you are unique and you have something to offer. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So if anyone has any questions, I'll take them. If not, I understand that people are shy. I understand we're shy. So Ali and Linda are excellent resources, for sure in this. So if you have any questions, I also put my email here if you want to email me any questions. I will do my very best to respond in a timely fashion. But Linda and Ali, I'm sure, are awesome and great resources on interview skills and how best to position yourself to get the job that you want.
Yes,
so thank you.
I mean, they have so many resources. Beyond us, they have these wonderful one-on-one mentorships with Qualcomm employees. And Wendy, you're so gracious also for your time and for putting your contact information there. I'm going to ask a question that I know that the girls are dying to ask. If they review your slides and they have any questions, are you available by email to them?
Yes. So if your questions, I'm definitely available. I'd prefer you ask me the questions now. But the thing that I tell my interns is if you can Google it and it can answer your question, then you should Google it first.
Yeah,
but
good point.
Yeah, you should definitely Google it, particularly just as a researcher, the researcher that I know I am. If I can find out what that information is online, I will definitely find it online before I come talk to you. But if you feel like there's an intricate situation or there's something that you want to know more about, or there's something else, yes, please go for it. Email me, and I will do my very best to respond in a timely fashion.
Great. With that, we have another question. Can you share your personal interview experience at NASA Ames Research Center?
Yeah, so the kind of questions I got, possibly one of them, I was asked about my previous employer. I was asked what I'm the most proud of. I thought that was a great question, because it was two Caucasian males, and I was very honest with them. I told them the thing that I'm the most proud of was really getting my PhD, and how I'm the first person in my family on my mother's side and my father's side to do this. And this was so important to my mother, because she has the first medical doctor on both sides, my big sister, and then I'm the first PhD. So, and I was honest with them, and and I could share this with them. I didn't get as many. Did I get technical questions? Yes, I did. I did get technical questions on the tools because it's a group that does work using the tools that I'm familiar with on something that I wasn't familiar with. So my background is controls in aerospace engineering, and you use tools like optimal estimation, particle filtering, Kalman filtering to get to the root of values and parameters that you don't know. So technical questions that I got were that I did my homework. I did my homework with them, and I talked about the website. So they have, it's a great team that I work with. I'm very fortunate. They put out data, and they have like data challenges. So they will do some works in battery analysis and put out data. That's the really great thing about NASA. They put out all the work that they've done, and they want you to take it and play with it. And so they put out that data. I was like, oh, I found the website where they shared the data, and I wish I had access to that when I was in graduate school, because I would have played with it. And then I told them something that was wrong with the website. They were like, oh, they didn't know that, and they'll fix it. So I showed that I did my homework. The question about my previous employer, I did tell them that because I had gotten an offer and I turned it down at my previous employer, and I hadn't gotten a chance to talk to the manager, the hiring manager there, because I'd worked with him. And so the person that was interviewing me asked me if it was okay to contact him to ask. I was like, you can, but just know that this is the situation. So I was really honest. I told him what it was. They did contact the person that I talked to about the job. I told them I knew someone that worked there, so they contacted that person. And it was a phone interview. And after the phone interview, they flew me out to, when I lived in Texas, they flew me out to California to check out the place, give a presentation, meet the team, and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, the questions are rolling in. I love it. I'm going to start from the top, and knowing everyone I know has, lots of things that they need to get done, let's try to stick with staying on the line for about the next 5 minutes. So Wendy, I'll leave it to you to be as concise as you feel like you want to be.
Okay.
Here we go. Next question is, I love this question. In regards to the imposter syndrome, when thinking more about hard skills like coding ability, and you know that your skills might not be as good as other applicants, how do you get more confident?
You don't know that your skills are not as good as other applicants. You don't know that. This is what you need to realize. A lot of people are faking it till they make it. You don't know that. Seriously, you really don't know that stuff. Don't compare yourself to people unless it's to motivate you to work harder. So you don't know what other applicants are like. A lot of people will talk and make it seem like, they're coding in 100 different languages and dreaming in 500 more, But my thing with imposter syndrome is due diligence, right? So pick one coding program, pick one coding language, and know it very well, right? Just pick one and learn it, and it's easy to translate, right? If you know one well enough, it's syntax, and you can find your way with the others. So how to tackle that? Pick one and work with it, and don't think about other applicants and what they know, what they don't know. They might be lying to you.
Great answer. Another question coming in, and also just showing great appreciation for your examples. The question is, have you or do you know anyone who struggled with self-confidence and how you dealt with it?
Yes. So I would say that I'm more likely to have imposter syndrome than self-confidence. I think I'm a relatively confident person. I wasn't always. I was more quiet, but I think I'm more self-confident. But I can speak to the imposter syndrome part and the confidence. Just due diligence, knowing yourself, listening, and being patient with yourself, right? Be patient with yourself, right? Remember, you've worked hard. You've gotten this far, right? You're positioned in a place that a lot of women in your countries haven't even had that opportunity to be, right? So be patient with yourself and know that no one was a genius overnight, right? Einstein said, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So stay with the problem, know yourself, and be patient with yourself. That's what I'd say.
Great. How do you answer the question, what are your weaknesses, and how do you answer them effectively?
So I gave an answer to the what are your weaknesses, and mine was I get excited about different things, and you want to answer, with a positive spin on it, right? So again, you don't want to just bear in mind, by the way, all of these, there's so many resources out there online. I mean, please keep the questions coming, but I don't want to forget to say this. You can find like 100, 200 sample interview questions and answers, right? But whatever you do with your weaknesses, make sure you put a positive spin on it. Don't just say, I like to eat, or I like to sleep, or I am impatient, or I'm intolerant, or I like to take on too much, or just, try to put a positive spin on it. But I gave the example with my own weaknesses earlier.
Okay, this is the last question that we have, but we still have more time if anyone wants to type another one in. What should I do if my strengths are not related to the job that I'm seeking?
Does that person want to give an example of their strengths?
So if the person could, just write an example. That would be really helpful. Do you have any instances while we wait for that, Wendy, if of
Yeah.
times where you've had to do that?
Yes. So I think I gave the example of like extracurricular activities, right? What you think isn't a strength that is related to the position or to the company, you can't always tie in. I give the choir example how you're easily adaptable, right? If you're singing in a choir or you have practice. So I was in a dance team in undergrad and I had practice twice a week. And I had practice on Saturday for 4 hours, on Wednesday for 2 hours. And I had all this homework that I had to do, but I showed up on time for practice and I stuck with it. And to me, it was important that I stuck with it because I didn't want to be a quitter, right? So sometimes you sign up for something, even softball. I did softball last summer with the league at NASA. You sign up like it sounds good, but when the time comes around, you're like, I'm not in the mood to do this anymore, right? And so you quit, right? I was like, I don't want to be a quitter. I'm going to stick with it. What does that mean for a position, right? And behavioral type question. It means that you don't like to quit. It means that you stick with something till you know it well enough. If there's something that you have to attend twice a week or 3 times a week, cooking, let's say cooking, right? You like to cook, right? You make a different meal every month that you've never made before. It means you're an avid learner. It means you like new things. It means that you like for people to, let's say you like to cook and you like for people to taste your food. It means that you're open to criticism, right? So let's say you cook and you feed your family, they don't like it. And you're okay with that. And you cook again for them next month, and you cook again for them the month after. It means that you're open to constructive criticism. It means that you take in, you listen, and you move forward with it. These are skills that hiring managers are looking for. These are things that they want to know, that they can tell you that I think that you should change this direction with the project, and the deliverables are not being met on time. They know that they can tell you that, and you wouldn't be angry or slouch or sulk, you know. So that's why I asked for the example of the strength, because what you see that is a strength that is not applicable to the job, it most likely is. So take an inventory of yourself and the things that you do.
Wonderful answer. I see that we haven't gotten any other questions. So, Allie, unless you have any questions yourself that you've heard from scholars in your advising, we might just leave it at that. Allie, do you have any last questions?
I don't. I think that everything that I've seen has been asked or answered.
Great. Wendy, any last thoughts? Last pieces of wisdom?
Prepare, be confident, and say thank you. That's it.
Wonderful. Wendy, thank you so much again for your time. You're taking so much time out of your already busy schedule. We truly appreciate it. This webinar has been recorded. So for those that weren't able to fit this into their school schedule, and I know everyone is very busy in midday while you're in classes, we're going to be sharing this out and wanted to reiterate how useful this was. I learned something from you every time I talk to you, Wendy. So I really value so much. I can't even express how useful this has been. So with that, I think we will all sign off. Sorry, and wanted to reiterate to everyone that you have Allie as a resource. If you have any last questions, we'll be sharing out more resources.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, everyone on the line.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. With that, bye-bye.